Welcome back to the Goddess of Mystery and Mayhem. I will be bringing different topics to my channel to bring a variety of topics here. If there is a certain story you like me to do for any of you, put it in the comments and I will do it. Okay, let's begin our story. The infamous Salem Witch Trials began during the spring of 1692, after a group of young girls in Salem Village, Massachusetts, claimed to be possessed by the devil and accused several local women of witchcraft. As a wave of hysteria spread throughout colonial Massachusetts, a special court convened in Salem to hear the cases. The first convicted witch, Bridget Bishop, was hanged that June. 18 others followed Bishop to Salem's Gallows Hill, while 150 more men, women, and children were accused over the next several months. By September 1692, the hysteria had begun to wane and public opinion turned against the trials. Though the Massachusetts General Court later annulled guilty verdicts against accused witches and granted indemnities to their families, bitterness lingered in the community, and the painful legacy of the Salem Witch Trials would endure for centuries. In January 1692, 9-year-old Elizabeth, Betty, Paris and 11-year-old Abigail Williams, the daughter and niece of Samuel Paris, minister of Salem Village, began having fits, including violent contortions and uncontrollable outbursts of screaming. After a local doctor, William Griggs, diagnosed bewitchment, other young girls in the community began to exhibit similar symptoms, including Ann Putnam Jr., Mercy Lewis, Elizabeth Hubbard, Mary Walcott, and Mary Warren. In late February, arrest warrants were issued for the Paris Caribbean slave, Tituba, along with 2 other women, the homeless beggar Sarah Good and the poor, elderly Sarah Osborne, whom the girls accused of bewitching them. The 3 accused witches were brought before the magistrates Jonathan Corwin and John Hathorne and questioned, even as their accusers appeared in the courtroom in a grand display of spasms, contortions, screaming, and writhing. Though Good and Osborne denied their guilt, Tituba confessed. Likely seeking to save herself from certain convictions by acting as an informer, she claimed other witches were acting alongside her in service of the devil against the Puritans. As hysteria spread through the community and beyond into the rest of Massachusetts, several others were accused, including Martha Corey and Rebecca Nurse, both regarded as upstanding members of church and community, and the 4-year-old daughter of Sarah Good. Like Tituba, several accused witches confessed and named still others, and the trials soon overwhelmed the local justice system. In May 1692, the newly appointed governor of Massachusetts, William Phips, ordered the establishment of a special court of oyer, to hear, and terminer, to decide, on witchcraft cases for Suffolk, Essex, and Middlesex counties. Presided over by judges including Hathorne, Samuel Sewell, and William Stoughton. The court handed down its first conviction, against Bridget Bishop, on June 2. She was hanged 8 days later on what would become known as Gallows Hill in Salem town. 5 more people were hanged that July, 5 in August and 8 more in September. In addition, 7 other accused witches died in jail, while the elderly Giles Corey, Martha's husband, was pressed to death by stones after he refused to enter a plea at his arraignment. Though the respected minister Cotton Mather had warned of the dubious value of spectral evidence, or testimony about dreams and visions, his concerns went largely unheeded during the Salem Witch Trials. Increase Mather, president of Harvard College, and Cotton's father, later joined his son in urging that the standards of evidence for witchcraft must be equal to those for any other crime, concluding that it would better that 10 suspected witches may escape than 1 innocent person be condemned. Amid waning public support for the trials, Governor Phips dissolved the Court of Oyer and Terminer in October and mandated that its successor disregard spectral evidence. Trials continued with dwindling intensity until early 1693, and by that May Phips had pardoned and released all those in prison on witchcraft charges. In January 1697, the Massachusetts General Court declared a day of fasting for the tragedy of the Salem Witch Trials. The court later deemed the trials unlawful, and the leading Justice Samuel Sewall publicly apologized for his role in the process. The damage to the community lingered, however, even after Massachusetts colony passed legislation restoring the good names of the condemned and providing financial restitution to their heirs in 1711. The trials that ensued became a cautionary tale as the accused lacked many of the legal protections we take for granted today. By the time William Phips, the newly appointed royal governor of Massachusetts Bay Province, arrived from England that May, accused witches packed local jails. At the time, the colony was operating without a charter, since the Crown had revoked the previous one due to repeated violations. Phips brought with him a new royal charter that gave the colony's legislature the right to establish a court. But the process would take time, and Phips had to act quickly. In a fateful decision, Governor Phips created a special court to try the accused witches of Salem. It was known as the Court of Oyer and Terminer, meaning to hear and determine in the Old Northern French that was still standard in English courts at the time. While remnants of this legal language still endure in the modern American legal system, the phrase oyez, oyez, oyez begins proceedings in the U.S. Supreme Court. Among others, the Court of Oyer and Terminer bore little resemblance to the courts we know today. When an accused witch appeared in front of the Court of Oyer and Terminer during the Salem Witch Trials, the law assumed they were guilty. Today, the presumption of innocence, or the idea that an individual accused of a crime is innocent until proven guilty, is one of the fundamental rights underlying the United States criminal justice system. Nearly a century after the crisis in Salem, during the debate over ratification of the Constitution, anti-federalist delegates, successfully, argued that the document needed a Bill of Rights to guard against the violation of individual citizens' fundamental freedoms by the federal government. Such arguments may have implicitly drawn strength from the negative example of the Salem witch trials when accused witches were deprived of even the most basic rights they should have been granted under English common law. That lesson continued to resonate in the centuries to come, especially during periods of crisis such as the Red Scare and McCarthyism in the Cold War era. It is in my view difficult to draw a direct line from the Salem witch trials to a specific existing legal doctrine. But I would argue that they have had an immense influence on how we think about the law. Niehoff says, the trials are filled with cautionary tales about how catastrophically bad things can go when legal proceedings fail to offer certain minimum guarantees. They also provide a perpetual reminder of the consequences of fear unchecked by the sort of reasoned judgment that the law demands. I have come to the end of this story and am so hoping you all enjoyed it. Till we meet again, have a blessed day or night. Sending out love to you all.